Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee's online worship service on this Ingathering Sunday. I'm Reverend Jennifer Nordstrom, and I'm honored to serve as the First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee's senior minister. We welcome people of all genders, sexualities, ages, races, ethnicities, histories, and bodies. We welcome your mind, your heart, and your spirit. We welcome all you're bringing with you today and all your heart longs to set down. We'd like to pay a special welcome to guests who are joining us this morning. If you're visiting for the first time or joining us from afar, why don't you say hello now in the chat and tell us where you're joining us from? I welcome you in to this worship service by inviting you to repeat our first church mission after me. We gather to nurture the spirit, engage the mind, and inspire action.
Good morning. I'm Reverend Dina McFeeters, and I'm honored to serve as Associate Minister. Our opening words this morning are, "Let Astonishment Be Possible," by Reverend Gretchen Haley. Whatever you have come in anticipating, whatever you expect or worry for our world, for the future, for our lives, let it go. Make space in your heart to be surprised. Make room in your soul for a new story to take shape. Let astonishment be possible. At this life that remains a miracle, imagine here the bursting of joy, relentless and resilient, coming in waves, washing over us with music and story, silence, and still this dreaming together, being hope for each other, and courage to believe in this new day dawning for us all. Come, let us worship together. Let's go to our beloved sanctuary to light the chalice, symbol of Unitarian Universalism.
Good morning. My name is Miles Schuler, and I have the pleasure of serving as worship associate today. I'm a fairly optimistic person, or at least I try to be. I'd rather keep my hopes up than get stuck on the bad stuff. The downside of this approach is that things build up. I'm not doing anything to help myself by ignoring what hurts. Take my chronic knee pain, for example. It started back in high school. I was messing around with friends, jumping over things, and I landed funny. It didn't seem too bad, so my parents got me a knee brace, and I waited to get over it. My knee really only hurt after doing physical activity for a period of time, and I wasn't doing much of that anyway. In college, I walked everywhere, even when my knee hurt. After a while, my other knee started hurting, so much so that I can't remember which leg I injured to begin with. Eventually, my hips would hurt if I was on my feet for a few hours. I still didn't think much of it, though. At least I could still walk. I accepted that it was just the way my body is, something I have to live with. I held on to that mindset for a few years. Well, then the pandemic hit, and I became unemployed. And then winter came, and I didn't really leave the house much. I was sitting all day, working through the reading list I'd made for myself. After a couple of months, I noticed my knees started hurting again. Up until then, they'd only ever hurt after I was on my feet. This was a different type of pain, too, sharp radiating up my leg. But I was still adamant that it was fine. I figured it would go away once I started doing things. Well, finally, the pain woke me up one night. It was like my body was yelling at me, doing whatever it could to tell me something really was wrong. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I made a doctor's appointment the next day. Well, it turns out one of my legs is shorter than the other, and my ankles are hypermobile, and together they put the rest of my body off kilter. This not only explained my pain, but also the countless childhood injuries involving rolled ankles and general clumsiness. The prescribed treatment was easy and straightforward. Wear stability shoes with the heel lift and go through physical therapy. 6 months later, I still wear those shoes every day, but I stopped physical therapy once I started seeing improvements. These improvements didn't go away completely. I'm not in frequent pain anymore, but I do have bad days. On those days, I get frustrated with myself because I could be avoiding the pain I'm in by just doing my exercises. I also feel guilty for not getting it checked out sooner and for not taking better care of my body. But mostly I'm grateful for taking any sort of action at all. The doctor told me that if I had waited even another 10 years, I might have been looking at surgery instead of PT. That's definitely something I don't want to deal with. It took a while to get used to not being in pain all the time. I didn't even realize how much it affected my life until the pain started coming back. Now I don't think twice about going to a festival or museum or concert because of my knee pain. Although COVID still puts a damper on those things. When you sit that long with pain, it just becomes part of your life. You can't see how it affects you until you finally get a break from it. I find I have a lot more energy than I did before seeing the doctor, not just physically, but mentally as well. There seems to be a whole section of my brain that's just been emptied out, ready to learn a new skill or meet new people, or even just take the time to take care for myself and listen to my body more often.
Welcome, 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 Buddy on Saudi. Welcome, 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 let us all rejoice today. Bring your sorrows and tomorrows, let our hearts now gather near. After grieving or receiving, everyone has honor here. Welcome, 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 Buddy on Saudi. Welcome, 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 Lord, in all you do, we pray. Star and moon may show your way, or a sun known as Christ, mind and soul must one obey. May your light guide you always. Welcome, 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 Buddy almost Welcome, 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 let us all rejoice today. Bring your sorrows and tomorrows, let all hearts now gather near. Neither grieving or receiving, everyone has honor here. Welcome, 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 Buddy almost Welcome, 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 love in all you do, we pray.
Thank you so much to the choir. It's lovely to see you. I feel very welcomed in to this in-gathering service. This story I'm about to tell is adapted from a version told by the Reverend Amanda Poppy, which she adapted from Rabbi Jason Rosenberg's original telling of it. There once was a very old woman who lived alone in a house by a great lake. She didn't have indoor plumbing, so every day she walked down to the lake to get water. She had 2 buckets that she hung on a pole that she carried across her shoulders, 1 bucket on each side. Every morning, she would wake up, attach the left bucket to the left side of her pole and the right bucket to the right side of her pole, and then walk down to the lake. When she got there, the woman would sit a bit with the lake. She would listen to the sound of the waves crashing or lapping or whispering on the sand. She would watch the water move, shape changing, light dancing. She could smell the water and the wet earth. Sometimes she could even taste the water in the air. Every day, the same lake, but different weather, different movement, different sounds and sights and smells. Eventually, the woman would wade into the water and fill her buckets. She would feel the wet sand scratch the bottoms of her feet and squish between her toes. When her buckets were full, the woman would put them back on her pole, left bucket on the left side, right bucket on the right side, and walk home. The walk home was a little harder than the walk down to the lake because this time the buckets were full of water. Their heavy weight pressed down on her shoulders and neck and back, and her legs moved more slowly to pull her up the small hill and down the dirt road back to her house. Every day, the woman walked the same path with the same heavy weight on her shoulders, lugging it up the same hill. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into years. Have any of you felt like you are carrying a heavy weight up a hill over and over again? I know I have, especially now. COVID feels like an endless hill of horror and drudgery. We make plans and then we throw them out because the science changes or the virus changes or human choices change the landscape again. One of our First Church members told me that as the head of her workplace's COVID task force, she's had hundreds of meetings and revised guidelines repeatedly. It's like we get to the top of the hill with the boulder we have so proudly pushed up, and the virus laughs and kicks it back down again. It's not all bad, of course. Every time I talk to you, you tell me all the things you're grateful for. We know our spiritual practices. We know how to listen to the waves and smell the water and put our feet in the sand and appreciate the gorgeous sunrise. Still, rolling that rock back up the hill of this pandemic over and over again with no end in sight is exhausting and demoralizing. In July of this year, I was convinced we were humming along towards an in-person, in-church, in-gathering today. It breaks my heart not to be with you all in the sanctuary this morning, and I'm looking forward to seeing some of you this afternoon at our water ritual, but nothing can take the place of in-person, in-gathering in the walls of our church. It feels like we're at the bottom of the hill again with Alexander and the terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day that blended into every other day like some Kafka-esque nightmare with no merciful end in sight. In our story, with the old woman who carries water every day, there was a further complication in her existence. That left bucket had a crack in it. Not a huge crack, but enough to let the water drip slowly from it as she walked. Every day, the left bucket's crack slowly dripped along her journey home, so that by the time she got there, it was only half full of water. For a long time, the woman thought of her cracked bucket as just another trouble in her life, one more cracked blessing that led to a half full bucket at the end of the journey. She was tired and frustrated with the same amount of work walking up the hill, meaning that the broken bucket caused less water to be with her at the end of the day. Do any of you feel like you have less water right now at the end of the day? I know I do. With the same amount of work, I'm less able to produce what I used to, and I'm more tired at the end of the day. Carrying water feels harder than it used to be. Studies have shown that our human capacity for empathy goes down as the number of people we are trying to feel for goes up. We're actually more capable of feeling for one person than we are for 100 people, and more capable of feeling for 100 people than we are for 1,000 people. In this terrible, horrible pandemic that has taken millions of human lives, we are at overload. And of course, the other tragedies and atrocities have not abated. If anything, they've been exacerbated by the pandemic. We are all moving through collective grief and trauma right now, and it is moving through us. Our brains, our spirits, our very bodies are at overload. We are leaking water, buckets broken, drained. There's also a further factor complicating this round of rolling the rock up the hill: vaccinations. Like many of you, I have been heartbroken by the number of people who have access to vaccination and have refused it, or at least haven't taken it yet. I had higher expectations of folks. Witnessing the politicization of public health has put some real cracks in my heart and in my theological anthropology. That's the word for the study of humanity in religion. Reconsidering the nature of humanity was one of the theological origins of Unitarianism. Our Unitarian founders shifted away from the Puritan understanding of humanity as inherently depraved to recognizing humanity as a sacred reflection of the divine. American behavior over the past 6 months has shaken my faith in the nature of human goodness, and in my most heartbroken moments has made me question whether the work of hauling water, of trying to transform the human condition, does any good at all. One day, the old woman who lived next to the Great Lake looked down at the path she had been walking, and she noticed something new. buds all along the left side of her path. The water she had been carrying for herself all these days and weeks and months, the water that had been leaking out of the crack in her supposedly broken bucket, had been trailing a steady line of nourishment in the dirt along her journey. Every day, she had been watering seeds buried in the earth, giving them the life they needed to grow. She watched in wonder as more months went by, and with her water work, those seeds grew into plants and then blossomed into flowers. Her half-empty bucket of water had been half full of nourishment for the beauty of the earth. The broken bucket had been blessing the land through its cracks. The woman saw her work carrying water in a new way. It wasn't just for her anymore. She was also carrying water for the land and for the flowers and for all her neighbors who were blessed by their beauty. Rather than seeing her bucket as broken, she saw it as carrying blessing in a way she had never imagined before. She thanked it for its work nourishing the land and for the way its surprise nourished her own heart and helped her understand how beauty can grow in ways we never imagined. What has surprised you in this season of cracks and broken buckets? Where has beauty popped up unbidden? What has nourished your own heart? In August of this year, The New Yorker published an article telling the story of Dorothy Oliver and the Panola Project. Dorothy owns the general store in Panola, Alabama, and along with County Commissioner Drusilla Russ Jackson, they made it their mission to get the folks in their small town vaccinated. The vaccination rate in Alabama is second to last in the country. When Dorothy and Drusilla started their project, it was last in the country. 51.1% of the state of Alabama has had at least one dose of the vaccine. Dorothy started calling her neighbors, asking for each one of them by name. She called them on the phone and she asked about their families. She listened to their worries and she helped them overcome obstacles to getting the shot. In their calls, Dorothy and Drusilla found that the biggest hurdle in their town was access. The small town is 40 miles from the nearest vaccination operation, and a lot of their neighbors didn't have cars. So they decided to work to bring a pop-up vaccination clinic to Panola. Dorothy told the New Yorker, "I just felt like I had to do it because the government, nobody does enough in this area. This area here," she said, "is majority Black, kind of puts you on the back burner. That's just it. I don't have to elaborate on that one." When Dorothy and Drusilla were short of the 40 people that they needed in order to bring a pop-up vaccination clinic to Panola, they went door to door to talk to their neighbors about getting the shot. They listened, they asked questions, they teased, but mostly they said, "You don't want to play around with this disease. Don't take the risk. Get vaccinated. Save your own life. Do it for your kids and your parents. Do it for your neighbors." There are about 400 people who live in Panola. And after Dorsey and Drusilla's work, 94% of the adults in town got vaccinated. And 100% of the folks who were over 65 did. In interview after interview, when news anchors from all over the country ask Dorothy if she's still working at it, she says, "I'm not going to stop until the job is done." When I first read the story about Dorothy Oliver, the cracks in my own heart started leaking tears. I realized that I've been so angry and disappointed in my fellow humans that I was beginning to lose hope for change. Dorothy Oliver and the Panola Project gave my hope back to me. But it's a changed hope. The big, sweeping systems change hope feels distant, but the small, concrete flowers through the cracks in the sidewalks hope is newly present with teeming life. The hope I'm holding now lets people be real and flawed and human and loved anyway. It acknowledges the way those big sweeping systems have shaped all of us, and it lets me approach my neighbors with more compassion for the way fear shows up differently in our lives. It also helps me release some of the pressure of fixing it all, having to change it all, of transforming cruelty and evil and death, and it helps me get more local, like Dorothy Oliver. My responsibility is here in my community. It's with you, it's with my families, it's with my neighbors. The big sweeping systems change hope isn't gone, but for me now, it begins here with the most concrete and maybe surprising first steps from the water. This time isn't easy. There's enormous loss in the process of transformation that's happening through this plague. But there are hidden seeds in the ground too, flowers that are being surprisingly watered by our cracked hearts. There is the wisdom of slowing down, of releasing perfection, and of rest. On a larger scale, there is recognizing how essential the work of food production and distribution and preparation really is. There's honoring the daily heroism of our healthcare workers. There's witnessing the lack of system collapse when student debts went unpaid. There's noticing the unpaid labor of parents, especially mothers. There's the practice of centering the needs of the most vulnerable. There is the knowing that healthcare isn't just an individual right, but a societal need. The truth of our fundamental interconnectedness is being revealed to us every day through our very breath. I still dream the big dreams of building systems that truly honor and serve all people. And I wonder now if we might still be on a journey in that direction, but that the lessons are revealing themselves through the cracks in the system's concrete, and that we must not just witness, but remember and repeat those lessons. Still, we have to start small, at home, with individual and collective actions here and now. We have to be able to feel our own emotions and connect to our own dreams of building a better tomorrow to even begin moving towards those dreams. And in that need is the beauty and the gift of leaking and broken hearts. As a first move towards transformation, may we each notice the way that the cracks in our hearts water the flowers and the cracks in the concrete through which tender shoots begin to grow. Today at 1 p.m., we're going to gather in person, in community at South Shore Park for a brief water ritual where we remember our blessings and commit to using them to bless the world. We'll be outside, distanced and masked, just north of the pavilion at the park on the grass across from the bike path from the sandy beach. Carry some water with you from home, not just the water of your work, but some literal actual water. And we'll have some available to share too. We'll remember together our blessings will be hope for each other, and we will make room to be astonished by the new miracles that life keeps making real before us. I love you. I miss you, and I'll see you soon. May it be so, and blessed be. Our closing words this morning are read a little poetry's tease reflection on the poem Broken Things by Sarah Teasdale, as well as Teasdale's poem itself. Here's T's reflection. 1. This is for you. If you were waiting for a sign, this is it. 2. You needed to break so you will understand that you are made of fragments and that you can be put back together. 3. This process, this living, this gathering of the self which has scattered, this is what's at stake and not the pieces sliding into place. 4. You will never get back everything. This is the risk of living, of loving. 5. You are stronger than you think. The poem Broken Things by Sarah Teasdale. Broken things are loveliest. Broken clouds when dusk is red, broken waves where a rainbow rides, broken words left half unsaid. Broken things, how quietly they comfort me, riven cliffs where I can watch the broken beauty of the sea. I love you, First Church. May you have broken beauty today. I hope to see you soon. May it be so.
We are going, heaven knows where we are going. We know within, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there.